That I think is going to be interesting.
The reason it matters is because that word has been redefined and redefined and redefined.
Yep.
So the establishment claims the mantle of conservatism, but we know better, don't we?
We do.
How do we know?
Well, because we watch their actions, and when they don't practice what is true conservatism, we understand that they have changed it and moved the needle.
The fruits they bear. The fruits they bear. Every time I see a politician running for office as a Republican, it's always the same push card. Always. Here's the push card. Gun in hand. Right? Bible here. Okay? And they check these boxes. I'm a conservative. What they don't get to, though, is really the details. And I used to hear when I was a kid, the devil's in the details. Well, here are the details. They run as conservatives, and then they govern as Democrats. But they're able to fool you with that checkmate, right? That checklist. Well, you know, I have a gun in my hand. I must be pro-Second Amendment. I have a Bible in my hand. I must be pro-religion. They say they're fiscally conservative, but then they get there and they do whatever they're told to spend however they want to spend. But more importantly, along that same vein, what is it that we're after? What is it that we really are upset about? It's the compromise.
Bingo.
It's the compromise. The dirtiest secret in the world is that compromise doesn't work in this modern age. Now, we're told it does, and we've been lied to for a century. Here's the lie. The lie is that you have to have compromise to get things done. Okay? Let's look at some evidence of that. Compromise to get things done. If the compromise is something as simple, let's say, for example, how much money we're going to spend on the Capitol curtains, you know, the decorations of the Capitol, the carpet, for instance. Or is there a compromise, for example, on how much a seat or a desk or a chair might cost? One side wants to spend $1,000 per seat. The other side wants to spend $200 per seat. They compromise at $500, and things get done. Now, that's a compromise that makes sense to me. But what happens when it's not simply about something inane or something like chairs, something immaterial? What if it's a principle? Because for the last 40 years, we've been told that we must compromise, and every single compromise I've seen always gave the liberals a break, an advantage. Every time. Name any piece of legislation that the federal government has entered into in the last, I don't know how long, where there was a compromise and the conservative movement didn't take a back seat. Now, here's the thing. The very Republicans that compromised are the ones saying they're conservative, trying to wear the mantle of conservatism. And they say that they needed to compromise to get things done. Well, look at it and let's invert it. When was the last time the Democrats compromised anything to get something done? It's a sign of weakness. It's a sign of a lack of backbone, and our party has had it for an awfully long time. And we hide behind the push cards, and we hide behind the pictures, we hide behind the guns in our hands, and we argued that we had to do what we had to do because it was impossible to get things done. But if you're paying attention to society, if you're paying attention to the modern age of politics, you realize that the two sides could not be further from one another. One side seeks the destruction, it seems to me, Jack, you tell me if I'm wrong here, one side seeks the destruction, it seems to me, of the very foundational principles of this country. What do they say? Evil, inherently problematic or racist, right? There's this class warfare struggle they've brought to the forefront, just like with Marxism, and they want to basically disarm, unravel, crumble the foundations of the country, the very principles we all believe in. The Republicans, on their hand, seem they want to conserve those principles, freedoms of speech and religion and dignity, individualism, right, as a component, as a very important component in our constitutional process and our republic, not a democracy. One side's going this way, one side's going this way. Where's the compromise there? If you're really paying attention, you have to begin to understand that compromise isn't really possible in this environment.
I don't see how.
I don't believe that it is.
Yeah.
How do you reach across the aisle, let's just say, for instance, with someone like AOC, who has been very open, Bernie Sanders as well, very open. Bernie Sanders literally ran as a Democrat, but he's a self-proclaimed socialist. Right? So how do you reach across the aisle with a socialist if you're not giving away some very important values along the way? And if you reach across the aisle once and you justify it and you say, well, that worked fine, you do it again 3 times, 4 times. Every time you do, incrementally, we lose something very valuable about this country. Now, anyone who recognizes that you've watched the modern age of politics, you should know this is the case. You should see the history. You should see the past legislation. You should see just how much debt we've accumulated. I can't think of a better example of how compromise has destroyed this country. When you think about just 10 years ago, I was campaigning against Thad Cochran, and I was outraged that the national debt was about $16.5 to $17 trillion. And in 10 years, we've doubled it.
Yeah.
Every dollar is a compromise. Now, we were talking how bad it was 10 years ago, and now they're saying, well, it's really nothing to worry about. Well, of course it is. We're starting to see the warning signs of a national debt out of control. But it's not just the debt. It's every time the government grows and liberty suffers, because government and liberty don't live very well in the same sphere of influence. Government by design is about coercion and force. Liberty is about letting people live their lives. You join them together, you're going to invariably have one side trying to tell the other side how to live. That's not America in my mind. So look at it this way. Every compromise along the way we tried to justify and say it was okay, nothing to see here, even though it was minor. If you take 1,000 minor compromises, it ends up being a pretty big issue. That's where we are. And now this whole concept, even something known as the Overton window. Jack, you may be familiar with the Overton window, but it's a neat little box whereby ideas are considered mainstream. Now think about it. The box sits here, and in that box, there's all the mainstream ideas that we can talk about civilly and peacefully because it seems okay to discuss. Whether you're right or wrong, pro or con, they're inside that box. The box, however, is moving to the left so quickly that even ideas that once were considered outrageous, such as defunding the police, are now in the Overton window. Mm-hmm. Ideas that were once considered outrageous, such as men can help babies, are now in the Overton window. The entire language has shifted to the left, and so the concept and the ideas have shifted. Now we're talking about things that used to be seen as lunacy. What about this? Every system in our government inherently racist. You say that 30 years ago, nobody has a serious conversation about that. You say it now, it's right there in the Overton window. We've allowed it to shift that way because of these little tiny compromises we make all along the way. Now you keep saying, Chris, you don't sound like you want to work with the other side. You're exactly right.
Why would we want to work with the other side when all they're doing is everything they can to destroy not just our country, but what is considered true norms? I mean, because they are changing the definition of what normal is. And that's something we need to be fighting back against. I mean, every day you find a crazy story.
You do. Normal. It's hard to define normalcy. But we always kind of defined it in that Overton window. You know, the ideas that were considered mainstream. We had debates about Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, and we had debates about the growth of the welfare state. But those are things that were in the window. And they were seen legitimate ideas, and people discussed them. Some wanted more government, some wanted less, but they were always in the window. Now we're talking about the abolition of whole agencies. We're talking about the reparations. Well, these are considered mainstream ideas. A few years ago, nobody took reparations seriously. Now, cities are starting to pay reparations.
Yeah.
Lawsuits are being filed to stop that process. Remember, Overton window. And every time we compromise, that window moves to the left, and we become more and more problematic because the language is controlled by the other side of the equation. Now, I tell you all this because Samuel Alito seems to share that opinion. Oh, I know that should disqualify him, right? He can't serve on the court ever again. But really, he's sharing something that it's only a matter of common sense if one thinks about it. Yeah. If you are a conservative, how do you conserve anything if you're giving it away piece by tiny piece? Here's what's weird about it. I don't know if you guys saw this story, but Alito was approached at an event, and it was a liberal documentary filmmaker. Her name is Lauren Windsor. She posed as a religious conservative talking to Justice Alito, and she recorded it secretly. Now, look, I realize that politics is a dirty business, but when you start recording secret conversations just to get somebody, isn't there something inherently wrong about that?
It's unethical.
She's a reporter. She's a documentary filmmaker. I guess she would call herself a reporter under these circumstances, but I mean, there's just something distasteful about the whole process. I don't think conservatives should do that. I don't think liberals should do that. It's just a matter of decency. But we talked about that last week. It's a question of men and women without chest. She doesn't have any ethics. Yeah. There are no ethics left in this country. So she records it secretly, and so she sets the guy up. She sets him up, and she says, I don't know how that we can negotiate with the left in the way that needs to happen for the polarization to end. That's what she told Alito. And she said, I think it's just a matter of like winning. Now that's setting him up, boy.
Oh, yeah.
Setting him up. And he said the right thing. He says, I think you're probably right. That's a fairly educated answer. He didn't say darn straight. He didn't say absolutely. I think you're probably right. That's a man who's considered the issues, I think, rationally. And then he said this. Now you tell me, even if you're a liberal, you tell me if we're wrong about this, because I know you see it this way. You've just been playing the game all these years. You know you're winning this in Washington. You know you're winning it in Jackson and the state capitals. But you know the words here should not be inherently objectionable because you feel the same way. This is what he said. He goes, on one side or the other, one side or the other, he said, is going to win. I don't know. I mean, there can be a way of working, a way of living together peacefully, but it's difficult, you know, because there are differences on fundamental things that really can't be compromised. They really can't be compromised. So it's not like you're going to split the difference. Listen to what he said. Listen to what he said. You liberals out there, you believe that too. You just don't want to say it because the game you've played for the last 30 years is tricking conservatives and Republicans into believing that compromise is honorable and compromise is good, knowing you never had any intention of compromising, none whatsoever. Instead, you took advantage of our weakness, and you've basically changed this country one small step at a time. But look at what he says. I'm going to read it again because I think it's profound and it's going to get him under so much attack, but they believe this too. If I were to ask Bernie Sanders this question inverted, he would agree. If I were to ask AOC this question, she would agree. Here's what he said. On one side or the other, one side or the other is going to win. I don't know. I mean, there can be a way of working, a way of living together peacefully, but it's difficult, you know, because there are differences on fundamental things that really can't be compromised. What's wrong with that?
Nothing.
What's wrong with that man's statement? You know it's accurate, you know it's truthful, in your heart of hearts you know this country is so divided there can't be a compromise any longer, at least from my perspective. And yet now he's being once again attacked. Samuel Alito, he can't sit on the court now because he's biased, which I think is really strange. The first argument they made is he was biased because his wife flew an American flag upside down. And they had an appeal to heaven flag somewhere. This was the strangest liberal argument I've seen in my lifetime. The man simply was associated with the January 6 folks simply because he flew a flag. A Supreme Court justice that knows more about history and traditions and the common sense in this country than most people, most liberals combined indeed, flew a Revolutionary War flag. He wasn't saying he joined the January 6th folks. He was raising alarm about some personal belief he had with the direction of this country. And yet they say that disqualifies him. However, the judge in the Trump case literally gave money to Joe Biden's campaign. The judge in the Trump case literally gave money to Democrat organizations that were used, according to their own words, to stop Donald Trump. He gave money to those entities, yet was allowed to sit as a trial court judge, finding, along with the jury, conviction, and now will sentence the man. But the left says that's okay. But a man that flies a flag can't serve with the United States Supreme Court. That's how silly this has all become. But it proves my point. There can't be any compromise. We don't even see breaking news the same way. I go to CNN just to watch every morning because I know how different it's going to be, and I'm amused by it. Then I turn to Fox, and it's the same problem. Fox reports it exactly the way Fox wants to report it. There doesn't seem to be any facts. It's all a spin on both sides. That goes back to the point, though. Even socially speaking, there's not going to be any compromise. What Alito said was accurate. We should defend what he said as being accurate, not just because it's correct, but because even as a Supreme Court justice, he has every right to say those things. Even originalism versus the new Constitution or the living Constitution interpretation, they're inherently in conflict. Consider, a man sits on the bench every day with 8 other Supreme Court justices, and they often have to interpret language, the black and white document of a Constitution that was written a long time ago and amended many times since it was written, right? Those words should mean things. And in his way of interpreting, that's called originalism, he would look at those words and define them based on the way they're understood at the time they were passed. That's it in short. Textualism and historical understanding gives us originalism. That's how he sees it. The other side says, forget that. Forget the words. Forget the past. Forget the data. We will say whatever we think it should say based on evolving standards. They've said it. Go back and read the case law. Evolving standards of decency is their test. Those two ideas are inherently in conflict. You can't even compromise there.
No.
So the man knows this. He's brilliant to know this. And people out there, even the left knows this. And yet now he's ostracized and demonized because he simply spoke an absolute truth. I like the man. I think he's right about what he said. We need 8 other justices, Alita, on the Supreme Court.
Well, Chris, I saw this story and it frustrated me because, again, it goes to show how much they just want to try to get this guy, how much they want to try to get Clarence Thomas, anyone that has an ideology that is different from them. Yet this is the same group that continues to try to tell us that everyone should be tolerant of everyone else's views. Yet they are the least tolerant individuals. You can see it time and time again with the way that they treat Samuel Alito here. I mean, again, nothing he said was wrong. Nothing he said proves any point that he can't judge fairly like they're trying to claim.
They know he's right.
They know he's right.
They know he's right.
That's why they're offended, because he said it out loud and he's exposing the truth.
They believe the same thing. You could ask any liberal operative on any city street, they're going to tell you the exact same thing. They think we're a bunch of crazy people that are going to compromise with us. And I'm okay with that because I think we're done compromising.
Yeah.
Then what does that mean for the future of the country? That remains to be seen. But I can tell you this, the idea we're going to be dictated to by those people, that's a whole other question altogether.
100% agree, because, this is ridiculous.
Speaking of some madness and more ridiculous stuff, look, I've been a Boston Celtics fan my entire life.
You have?
I have, and the pictures show it, the blood and guts show it. I've been there as long as I've been alive. My dad was a Celtics fan, my mom, a Celtics fan. My father, to show you how bad it was, I don't know if you guys remember back in the day when satellite dishes were basically the size of swimming pools.
I do.
Do you remember those things?
Do.
Now satellite dishes are about this big. Yep. There was a time you couldn't fit one in the room. Yeah. Well, we had to watch the New England Sports Network. It was that important. NESN to this day. And we did it because we could not miss the sporting events from the Massachusetts area, specifically
Celtics.
The Celtics. The Boston Garden was like a religion, like a cathedral. How much of a cathedral is it to me? Well, let me tell you something. This is a really cool story. They tore the old garden down a few years ago. And by the way, that broke my heart. It really did. I like the old traditions of the Boston Garden because it wasn't about dancing girls and it wasn't about music. They had an organ, for goodness sakes. They played an organ. That's all they did. And they played basketball.
Yep.
It was nothing fancy, no fireworks shows, no confetti falling down. They put a ball on the court and they played basketball. And about 16,000 people went out there and watched them, and it was the coolest environment you could ever imagine. No air conditioning was in the Boston Garden. There was one year they played the Lakers. It was a late game, late May, early June. It was 104 degrees on the court. And they didn't complain. They played basketball. Now, those weaklings, the Lakers, they couldn't handle the heat very well. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar over there sucking on oxygen trying to survive. That was one of the happiest moments of my life, watching those guys wilt. No pun intended to Wilt Chamberlain. to wilt right there at the heat of the Boston Garden and lose that game. And it was a massacre. It was a mind-blowing, wonderful day for the Garden and for the Celtics. I love the Boston Celtics. I even have 2 original seats from the Garden. When they tore that place down, we were able to find 2 original Boston Celtics seats signed by arguably the greatest basketball player in the history of the world. That's Larry Bird. I would like to have a couple of more signatures on there, such as Bill Russell. He has 11. Yeah. He has 11 world championships. Yeah. 11. Celtics. Well, right now, I know a lot of our people hate the NBA, and I know they don't like basketball.
With good reason.
What's that?
With good reason.
With good reason. It's all gotten there's so much moon battery in all the leagues now. And we're going to get to the WNBA in a second with Caitlin Clark. But again, the Celtics, very important to me. We bought this big satellite dish. We never missed a ball game. When I was a kid, I went to watch them play in Atlanta. Dominique Wilkins, remember?
I remember the human highlight reel.
Human highlight film, and they beat the Celtics by a point that game. And Celtics almost never didn't lose that season. They only lost a handful of games all year. But here they are again, number 18 loading, Jack.
Yeah, they're in
number
the finals.
18 loading.
Up 2-0.
You might not know what that means, but they've won 17 world championships. Nobody else has won 17 world championships, including that disgusting yellow and purple team from the West.
Yeah, because they claim some that took place in Minnesota.
That doesn't count.
No, it doesn't.
Doesn't
I
count.
agree with you.
Can't move cities, especially from Minnesota to L.A. and claim a championship.
Yeah.
It's like claiming the Peoria YMCA League, which they probably would if they could.
Oh,
they
absolutely.
could get
They would.
Anyway, I don't like the Lakers very much. It should be clear. Should be clear. Here's the thing. The Celtics have an African-American coach now. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't shock you. But I guess it shocks some people. He's a good guy.
A really good guy.
He's a darn good coach, too. And one of the youngest coaches in the history of the league to actually take a team to the NBA Finals. And he's up 2-0 right now against Dallas. I've got no beef with Dallas. I like Dallas. Mm-hmm. How can you be against any team from Dallas?
Well, I can think of a few.
He doesn't like the Cowboys. But how can you be against any team from Dallas? Here's the thing, though. He's asked in an interview last night after the Celtics win. And how do you even, this reporter, they're all the same. Mm-hmm. We're going to try to inject race into something.
Yep.
We're going to try to make it political, man. We're going to try to ruin this moment for this guy and everybody else watching. It's a basketball game. This may be a shock to you, but most of the guys playing are black. Most on both teams. Race does not seem to be a component here at all, nor should it be. But hey, let this one reporter in the locker room, let's inject race into the conversation. So this guy, I don't even want to use his name. If you want to use his name, you can later. But he asked the Celtics head coach a question. Now, bear in mind, the Celtics head coach is African American. He asked him a question. Here it is, Race 101. For the first time since 1975, the NBA Finals include 2 black head coaches. Okay, we know where it's heading.
Yep.
We know where it's heading. Given the plight, he says, of black head coaches in the NBA, do you think this is a significant moment? Do you take pride in this? How do you view it, or do you not see it at all? We're just trying to watch basketball. And this guy's trying to, bring politics into everything. And this coach gave the best answer he could have ever given in a million years.
Yep.
And the whole place, you got to go watch it, the whole place went dead quiet. You could hear a pin drop. What do you say? What do you say? What do you say? Now remember, he asked him, for the first time since 1975, we have 2 black head coaches. Given the plight of black head coaches in the league, do you think this is a significant moment? And the answer, I wonder how many of those have been Christian coaches. Perfect.
Yeah.
He didn't take the bait.
No.
You know why? Because he's a grown man who's a strong individual, who's a darn good coach on his own right. He doesn't need to be a black head coach. He can just be a great head coach.
Yeah.
And that's what America is supposed to be about. So he says, I wonder how many of those have been Christian coaches. That's a darn fine point, because that same reporter would never ask that question.
Nope.
And I can tell you the answer, probably almost none. Or at least they could be self-professed, but they don't behave like it all the time. But this young man does.
Absolutely he does.
And so he stands there in the middle of all this and has the best answer I've heard, frankly, in years by any head coach. Because he's trying to he's not just simply trying to dodge the race thing, he's trying to point out that there's something more important at play here. Mm-hmm. That religion does matter, that Christianity does matter. We're not perfect people, we understand that, but how about that? Let's talk about that. The room goes dead silent. Nobody wanted to talk about that.
Nope.
Did you notice that? No follow-up
10
questions.
seconds.
10 seconds of dead silence. And to his credit, he just sat there and stared.
Yep.
That is a strong, wonderful human being.
Yep. And he has to know the attacks are coming. The guy that asked the question has already written it felt like a novel column ripping him to shreds for having the audacity to not answer his question, which to me shows that this reporter, and I call him a reporter in name only. This is an agenda pusher. He's not a true reporter. He's there to push an agenda. The fact that he wrote a column that was as long as it was as wordy as it was, and just simply attacks him because he didn't want to answer his question, that shows arrogance of that guy.
He's a punk.
Yeah.
He's a punk. 1,500-word column attacking this man for actually giving the right answer.
Yeah.
How about this, big guy? How about a 1,500-word column saying, wow, I've never considered the fact that actually being a Christian could be that rare now.
Yeah.
And that it could be important in an NBA Finals that we see something like that.
Yeah.
But no, he attacks him. And I'm going to get to that because he penned this long column and he begins. Race is one of the defining issues in this country, and it's not easy to talk about But when one avoids it, it adds fuel to an already complicated fire. Now let's just stop right there. Listen to what he says here. He's attacking the coach, this African-American coach, who, by the way, who just won his second game in the NBA Finals, is about to be crowned the coach, the best coach in the world, right?
Yeah.
And he's attacking him because he didn't play the race game. Now, get this, though. This is funny. Race is one of the defining issues in this country, and it's not easy to talk about. That's all we've talked about for 30 years.
Absolutely.
Everywhere we look, people are talking about it. What's this man talking about? Race is not easy to talk about. It's the most talked about subject ever.
Yeah.
Ever. I know at least for the last 10 to 12 years. I guess if you don't see the world through a racially based lens, maybe we're not talking about it enough. But everybody else is frankly sick of talking about it.
I know I am.
I think both sides. I think everybody's sick of talking about it. I think most Americans want to move on where we value individuals as individuals and quit talking about these issues all the time. Not everything has to be politicized.
Can I be honest with you? You know, because I'm like you, I like the Celtics. So even though I'm not a huge NBA fan anymore, I've kind of had tuned it out. But because they were making a run, I was actually paying attention this year. I knew they were playing. I had no clue, nor did I care the race of the two coaches. I just knew these were two good teams that were going to be put together what I hope is an entertaining series that ends in a Boston Celtics championship. I didn't care about the race of the coaches. All I knew was that these coaches did a fantastic job to get their team to the finals, and yet we want to put I think you're doing these coaches a disservice by focusing on the race and not on their accomplishment.
Well, he goes further. And this is where it really got me, because you can tell this guy's trying to punch not just this coach. Now he's trying to punch the city of Boston.
Yep.
Nobody disputes that there are racists in Boston. This is the newsflash for this guy. There are racists everywhere.
Yep.
Both sides. Okay? But Boston has its share. Now, that doesn't mean it's a racist city. He pointed out something that happened to Bill Russell or Dee Brown.
Yeah.
Look, those are a couple of knuckleheads in Boston acting like Bostonians. That doesn't mean the whole city is racist. In fact, he pointed out, he goes, we have a responsibility, he said, to talk about race because Boston is inherently racist, is basically what he's saying. But do you know the history of the Boston Celtics? I just happen to have it right here in my hands.
I know it.
This championship-based team with 17 world titles. It was 1950 when the Celtics did the unthinkable. They drafted a black player. Mm-hmm. The first one in the league. This racist organization in 1950 wasn't even allowed or discussed. Were the first to draft a black player. They went on to become the first NBA team to start an all-5 black starting five.
They did.
Casey Jones, Sam Jones, Tom Sanders, Willie Naws, and Bill Russell. It was 1964. And then Russell became a coach, the first African-American coach in the league. You see, Boston's not new to this. They've been leading the charge. And yet this crazy guy makes it sound like they're back in the bad old days.
Yeah.
That's not what the Celtics are. They've always been a team that was colorblind. Do you know why they were colorblind? Because they cared about excellence and winning more than they did color. There's a famous story about when they drafted that first African-American player. And it was Chuck Cooper. And sure enough, Walter Brown gets up and that's at the owners' meeting, and he says they're going to draft Chuck Cooper. And somebody pointed out that, hey, you know he's African-American, right? Mm-hmm. They used a different word, not the bad one, but another one.
Yeah.
You know he's a Negro, right? That's what he said. And to his credit, he goes, I don't give a if he's polka dotted. All Brock says we need the team, he need him to win, and we're going to draft him. That's a long time ago, 1950. Before I was born, before anybody in this room was born. Why is he still busting up Boston for being a racist city? This team's one of the most progressive racially teams in the history of the NBA.
Well, for one, because it helps sell the narrative he wants to sell. Two, this is another clear example of the left's anti-tolerance. Because again, they preach tolerance, they preach acceptance, but anytime somebody wants to try to challenge their notion or doesn't want to play their game, then therefore they're a problem.
So remember, he wants to talk about race because Boston and I guess the Celtics are inherently racist.
Yeah.
But let's go back to a guy that would really know the truth about that. Not just Bill Russell. Of course, he would defend the Celtics all day, every day. Mm-hmm. Bill Russell's one of the greatest players and greatest men that ever lived. But what about Mr. Cooper's son? Mm-hmm. You know, his daddy was drafted in 1950. He went through all of that. He was there as a little boy. He grew up around it. He said, quote, We could not have picked a better legacy partner to have. And their track record speaks for itself. The Celtics are supportive of me and always have been in my family. We have a lot of respect for that organization. See, that's truth.
Yeah.
That's America. That's the way it's always been. It's just these rebel-rousers out there like that guy. He can't let it go. He thinks there's a problem behind every turn, and it's not. America's ready to move on from people like that reporter.
Yeah.
And thank God that coach was ready to move on as well. Now, I don't understand, though, putting aside the racial issues just for a moment, why the comment about the Christianity thing caused such a quietness and silence in the crowd. It was like every reporter there swallowed their tongue. Did you notice that?
It was, again, I've got the audio clip, and I'm going to play it on one of my shows coming up because you have to hear it. You have to see it. I mean, I think the audio, why good. I think it's better if you can view the video because the coach is sitting there. He's looking around the room to see if anybody wants to say anything more about it. And nobody says anything until somebody says, okay, we're calling on another reporter.
Perfect answer.
Finally moved on.
Perfect answer. Perfect answer.
Yeah.
Now it's time for our sponsors, Jack, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, Chris. This year, of course, has come with a lot of uncertainties. Will red-hot inflation continue? Will interest rates continue to soar? How can the Fed promise a soft landing when all signs point to another serious recession? If the beginning of this year has shown us one thing, inflation is not slowing down, and the Fed is completely incapable of fixing these issues. Like millions of other Americans, I found myself asking, how am I going to protect myself and my family? That's why we at the Midnight Ride Network spoke to the folks at Genesis Gold Group, our new platform partner for the Midnight Ride. They walked me through how I can protect my savings with real physical gold and silver. Genesis makes it easy to convert your 401k or your IRA into a retirement account backed by precious metals like gold and silver. Genesis Gold Group has decades of experience helping folks just like you preserve your hard-earned savings, and the service provided to their clients is truly one of a kind. Call Genesis Gold today at 800-200-GOLD for a no-commitment, informative consultation with one of their experts to find out if Genesis can be a fit for you. That's 800-200-4653 or visit them at midnightridegold.com. And when it comes to protecting you and your family's future, I'm excited to share with you another one of the Midnight Ride's new sponsors, Prepper Beef. Prepper Beef offers a range of freeze-dried beef and freezer boxes with steaks and roast made from high-quality all-American cattle. These products are made to last for up to 20 years, ensuring you have access to premium beef for decades to come. By supporting Prepper Beef, you're not just buying beef, you're supporting American ranchers, values, and your family. Join us in our mission to eat well today and eat well tomorrow. Visit midnightridebeef.com and stock up for your future today.
Please take a look at those sponsors. They're very important for this show. If you can help them, please do. And as Jack said, the products are absolutely outstanding.
Absolutely.
Here, look, I'm going to get off basketball in a second if you'll just indulge me. It's just I'm a big basketball fan, and there's a lot of basketball things happening right now. I've talked about the Celtics. I've talked about the magnificent coach the Celtics have. I really believe that this team's the team of destiny. I think they're so loaded and so well balanced. It's going to be difficult for Dallas to beat them. And the reason they're well balanced and the reason they're difficult to beat is because that coach puts the best players on the floor. He's got about 8-man rotation deep. He plays the best players. He plays them at the right times. And each player, just like last night, at any given moment can step up and do tremendous things. It was the point guard last night, a guy that didn't score a lot this year, a guy that was basically their fourth option on the floor that scored 26 points last night. So it's a tough team to beat when you have people step up because he's playing the best players. You see, in a meritocracy, it doesn't matter about your politics, religion, your race. You play the best. That's what the Celtics are doing right now.
Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering if we know it works because it seems to be working. Why can't we have the best for the U.S. Women's Olympic basketball team?
That's a good question.
Because we're not getting the best. They left the best one off. Feels weird. It's like deja vu all over again. In the 1950s, a lot of folks worked to keep African Americans out, worked hard to build obstacles. It seems to me they're building a lot of obstacles for Caitlin Clark right now.
I've noticed.
Now, I'm not saying it's because of her race necessarily, but I think there's something going on here. There's a lot of hostility toward this girl, and she is the best female player in college any of us have ever seen. Don't kid yourselves. Don't think for a second it could be UConn's ball players or somebody out west. This child, this girl, is the best women's basketball player any of us have ever seen come out of college. Now, she goes to the pros, and she's met with this instant hostility.
Which they told us was coming before she ever even got drafted.
Interesting. Why the hate?
Jealousy.
What else?
And I think, again, they want to talk about race. Why not talk about it here?
Do you think maybe that could be a component here? Because it appears maybe it is. Now, I don't know that for a fact. Just based on the objective or anecdotal evidence. Let's look at this.
You know, it could also be she has a boyfriend, so she's straight too. So that's another thing that doesn't fit their ideology
you're
here.
So get this show canceled. Now, with that said, she did make the Olympic team.
I noticed, yeah.
And I'm going to get to the way she responded here in a second because it was so professional.
Class.
It was so perfect with the way she responded. She was disappointed, obviously, but you couldn't tell. And she handled it with dignity. But here's what's strange. I went back and looked at some of the stats here and some of the other data. You know, right now, only one woman on that team has more assists than her. Nobody on that team combined has made as many three-pointers as she has. In the entire league, Caitlin Clark is ranked 8th in scoring. But perhaps more importantly, let the marketplace speak its mind. Everywhere she goes, they sell out arenas. People see her as the next great thing. But she's being blocked. Now, you say, well, these other girls have played. Well, they have. They've been around a long time. But is that the test? Because we talked about meritocracy earlier. If we were talking about the Celtics, right, a minute ago being great because that coaches teach us through meritocracy, I mean, it wouldn't be wise, as great as Bill Russell once was, to place him on the starting five of this team, would he? What is he? Okay. He passed away a few years ago, but let's say prior to that, he was 80, what was he, 79 or 80?
I'm not sure.
He wouldn't have wanted to play. He shouldn't have wanted to play because he wouldn't have been the best player under those circumstances. Well, I say that because Brittany Griner made this team.
Yeah, I saw
Brittany
that.
Griner has only played in one game this year. She only has 11 points for the entire season. How did she make the team? Is that politics or is that merit? Think about it.
Got to be politics.
I think so. What about 41-year-old Diana Taurasi? How's that last name? Taurasi?
Taurasi.
UConn. I used to watch her play. She's 41 years old. Now, dynamite talent.
Yeah.
Loved watching her play. Loved watching her play at UConn. You telling me that 41-year-old is better than Caitlin Clark right now?
Probably not.
I wouldn't think so. By the way, she's already completed in 5 Olympic Games.
Yeah, well, she need another one. Why not pass the torch?
Sounds
like politics here. Is she a politician?
That's the point I'm making. I don't know that it's race. I don't know. I just know it's not merit. And it seems that the story seems to be, have you heard this, that these 5 ladies blocked her?
That's what I believe.
Have you seen any evidence of that, or is this just something that people are speculating as to what happened?
Have I seen any true evidence? No, but I have seen statements, and I have seen these women talk about her and say, well, when she gets to the league, she's going to learn. And you've noticed how they've played her since she's come in the league. It's been very physical. And it's also those ladies that have been some of the very first ones that have spoke up and said, well, the international game's just more physical and she's not ready. So you've seen them be the first to defend it.
I'd be doggone it. It appears she's pretty ready, being 8th in the league in scoring right now.
I would think so.
Packing those arenas. Here's something else. Again, I don't know that this is racial necessarily. I think it's easy to come to that conclusion if you're not paying attention because it appears that it could be, but I don't know that to be a fact. My question is, and this is going to get us in trouble as well, but I think it needs to be discussed. We've already gotten ourselves canceled multiple times.
We're going to keep getting canceled.
Is there a double standard here? And let me see if I can go through this and so people don't roll their eyes too much, because there appears to be when it comes to race in basketball. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give you some examples, some of which I lived through, some of which I watched others live through.
Yeah.
I've been the only white guy on an African-American basketball team. Mm-hmm. I know what they said about me. I know what their moms and dads said about me. I was spending the night one night. I was breaking the racial barrier back in the day. I was over on that side of town spending the night one night, the only white kid in the house. And I heard one of the uncles come in and say, "Why's that white boy in here?" I guess that was acceptable. I guess it's not a big deal. I guess when I stepped foot on the court that I was supposed to be slow. I was supposed to not be a starter. I was supposed to not be able to jump. Do we accept race from that component and then dismiss it or condemn it in other ways?
Absolutely.
Here's an example. When Larry Bird signed with the Celtics, there's a great interview of Cedric Maxwell. That was cornbread.
Mm-hmm.
Cedric Maxwell played for the Celtics, African-American guy, big smile, could flat out ball. I think he was 1981 Finals MVP. Cornbread could go. Cedric Maxwell. Well, he was interviewed about Larry Bird, and he just said, "That white boy ain't no good."
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were all laughing about him being a white boy. Nobody raised an eyebrow. It seems that race is somehow justified in that arena. And then he talked about how Bird proved himself, right?
Yeah.
It's just weird to me that that was all accepted and we snicker about it when it's just as bad a racism as what's occurring in other parts of society, except we condemn that, but we seem to laugh at it when it happens in basketball.
Here's what frustrates me on this whole topic, and I've talked about it multiple times on my show, The Right Side. I find it fascinating, the fact that they want to try to defend racism when it comes from minority groups. Matter of fact, and we've talked about this, I think, on this show, where they try to argue that, well, a minority group can't be racist. And that's inherently false, because racism is born from hatred, or even just viewing somebody as a lesser because of the color of their skin. That's racism. It doesn't matter your social status. If you have a bigoted heart, you're a racist.
And most folks don't even talk about these things because they know how delicate it all is. But I only say these things because I've lived through it and I've seen there is a significant double standard on the basketball court. And I think it's relevant to this conversation. And, it's no coincidence that every white guy that can play is called Larry Bird. You know what I mean?
That is something I have noticed, that every time there's a new one. That's
listen,
what
the only reason I bring it up is because you look at this situation and it is inverted. You've got this white woman trying to play in a mostly African American league, and she's just being completely attacked for it. It seems. I hope she continues to handle it professionally. I hope she doesn't make it about race. I hope she makes it about talent. I hope she proves to everybody that she's as good as she thinks she is and as good as we think she is. And her question, when she answered it, her answer was really, really good. Because they asked point blank, did you get a chance to see the roster? What was your reaction? Here's her answer. I'm excited for the girls that are on the team. I know it's the most competitive team in the world, and I know it could have gone either way. Me being on the team, me not being on the team, I'm excited for them. I'm going to be rooting for them to win the gold.
That's awesome.
It's perfect. I mean, why can't people get to this level when it comes to these types of issues? She could play the victim if she were inclined. She could be angry and point fingers and talk about race or religion and all this stuff. She didn't. She rose above it because she wants to be judged as an individual. And I think there's some merit to that. I think there's some beauty into that. And then they ask her again, just this reporter, once again, she's trying to get a story here. She said, what's your level of disappointment not hearing your name on the roster? Now remember, she had just answered the question.
Yeah.
This reporter wants a story.
Yep.
That's how reporters are, Jack.
I know. I have been in the room with them. I have witnessed these type of line of questioning.
So they ask her, aren't you disappointed? They want her to say, yes, it's just horrible. No, she says, honestly, no disappointment. I think it just gives you something to work for. That's a dream. Hopefully one day I can be there. I think it's just a little bit more motivation. You remember that. And hopefully in 4 years, when 4 years comes back around, I can be there. Wow, that's a professional.
Yes.
That's a professional.
That's class.
Not Brittany Griner trying to make political plays and acting a fool, smoking dope, getting caught. This is class. Race has nothing to do with it.
No.
It's just being a good person. And I hope she gets a fair shake there. We'll find out soon. You know who didn't get a fair shake?
Who didn't get a fair shake?
Splash Island. I mean, what? Splash Mountain.
Splash Mountain.
You ever been on Splash Mountain?
It was one of my favorite rides at Disney World. The couple of times I got to ride it, I didn't get to go there often, and I didn't get to. But I thought it was a great ride. It was fun, and I liked the whole build up, everything.
What do you remember about it?
I remember it was based on Brer Rabbit.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
Song of the South, the old Disney movie.
And I remember the big steep drop, into the water.
Yeah, everybody remembers that.
Yeah, so I mean,
As a kid, that's your first near-death experience.
I thought it was awesome.
I did too. It's the first time I thought, "Oh Lord, I'm dead. I will never survive this." Then you survive it, you think, "Oh my God, I got to do it again."
Yeah.
Which begs the question: when you ride a roller coaster, do you like the roller coaster, or do you like surviving the roller coaster?
You like surviving.
I
the
think so
roller
too.
coaster.
I think when we finally the ride stops, we're so excited we survived. We think we had a good time. Right?
Yes.
And there's a lot of rides like that at Disney, and I've enjoyed a lot of them over the years. But I really like Splash Mountain, and when I was riding it, I never saw any racism.
No, it was cartoon. It was about a cartoon rabbit. So,
I think so. It was a cartoon rabbit. Maybe it was a fox or something, right?
Yeah.
There was an antagonist of some sort. And it was a water ride, and it was really cute. It was based in like the 19th century South.
Yeah.
Let's keep in mind now, this wasn't the South based in the 1860s.
No.
This is the 19th century South. And so you had a handful of little stereotypes there, and the little music that was so catchy. And Disney thought that was offensive. I don't know why they thought it was offensive.
Because a group of egghead liberals showed up and told them it was, and they, as they always do, they catered to the egghead liberals. That's why.
Well, it's weird because it seems that anything, look, it's not hard to identify something that's truly offensive. Mm-hmm. It just hits you right in the nose.
Yeah.
But when you have to construct it, which this is, you literally had to work hard to find something offensive about a bunch of cartoons in a ride at Disney. Do you think it was just a loose association with the South? And if that's the case, how much longer will Mississippi be here? Will they change our name?
There's already some on the left that want to kick us out because we're too different than them, as you know. But Chris, where they drew this from. They drew it from the fact that movie, Songs of the South, if you notice, that's the one Disney movie you can't purchase. You can't find it anywhere.
What's weird, though, nobody knew. When I was having that near-death experience, I didn't know this was Song of the South.
No.
It was just a funny water ride.
I knew who Brer Rabbit was, but I wasn't familiar with the movie.
Is it Brer or Briar?
It's Briar, I think. I keep saying
Is it Brer in the Briar Patch?
It might be. I don't remember. They canceled it, so how can I remember?
The point I'm saying is, now we have a new ride. And I'm sure the ride is beautiful. It's based on The Princess and the Frog, and that's a pretty cool movie.
Yeah.
And there's been some mixed reactions to it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of folks seem to like it. Others are saying, look, this has gone too far. I mean, the arguments you were making that this is not a racist thing. I guess my concern is this. I don't mind them updating things, and I know progress occurs and all this kind of stuff, but you had something really special to a lot of Disney fans.
Yeah.
And it was very nostalgic. It's been around since the park opened, is my understanding. And then it changes just because somebody out there has to work hard to be offended. And that leads to one of my last points of the day before I share some Biden stories. We live in a society that we're going to be constantly offended in. In fact, the price you pay to live in a free society is to be offended from time to time. Mm-hmm. I see things all the time that, knee jerk. I just yell at it. But I don't go about trying to ban it. And that's the distinction. There's music out there I find objectionable. I don't burn CDs. There are books I find objectionable. I don't burn books.
Yeah.
Now, granted, you don't want 4-year-olds reading it, and so you have to have age restrictions from time to time. But as adults living in a free society, aren't we supposed to value differences? Aren't we supposed to value sometimes even being offended? Sometimes we learn things by being offended.
Yes.
But what I never wanted to do, and I don't want my kids to go about doing, is to find reasons to be offended when they really don't exist and then seek to impose their will on somebody else. I don't get that.
I don't either, Chris.
Now, I don't dispute the beauty of this new ride. I don't dispute the new technology of the new ride. Mm-hmm. I dispute the motivation behind changing the old ride.
Exactly. That's my problem with it. It's not the Princess Frog or whatever it's called. It's not what they chose to replace it with. It's the fact that they replaced it in the first place because it seemed so unnecessary. And in order to make these changes, Chris, didn't they have to close the ride for almost a year?
Which it was a long time.
There's several families that, again, they can only go to Disney maybe once in their lifetime as a family. They didn't get to experience it because they decided, hey, guess what? We're going to cancel a popular ride just because a couple of egghead liberals decided to whine and moan about it.
I love the fact that you thought it was called the Princess Frog.
What is it called?
It's called the Princess and the Frog.
Princess and
Very
Frog. I
different
don't remember.
things. Very.
I'm thinking the Princess Bride, I guess.
For all we know, there could be a Princess Frog, but it hasn't made Disney yet.
It will.
But if it offends you, Jack, I'm sure they'll listen to your concern.
No, if it offends me, they'll absolutely air it because they don't care what offends me.
You can't go through
I'm
life.
not a liberal.
You can't go through life offended all the time. You can't go through life getting your feelings hurt all the time. You have to have thick skin in this country. And if something offends you, maybe you just try to see the joy in other people's eyes.
I thought you were going to
Because I know a
say
lot
shut
of
up.
That too. That too. Turns out Joe Biden should probably shut up because he's hurting his chances of re-election. And we're grateful for it because every time he makes a public appearance, it's very clear he's way too old to be president of the United States. I'm going to end with this because we're out of time, but I want you to think about Joe Biden recognizing his inherent problems. He's really old. And it's not that he's really old. He's behaving very old.
He's slipping.
It's not even the word for it, man. I saw a video the other day. He acted like he literally was having a hard time taking a couple of steps forward.
I saw.
And I don't like that. He's still a man.
Yeah.
Now, I hope he loses, but I don't want to see him lose what's left of dignity.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a human being, for God's sakes. And here he is out there. He can barely put together a sentence. Now, this goes to the heart of a lot of problems with politicians, and I'm going to get to that in a second. Joe Biden knew he was too old.
Yes.
He knows it now. His sons know it. His wife knows it. The people that are supposed to love him, they know it, and yet they do nothing.
They still prop him up out there.
I don't get that. Don't we have a responsibility to the people that we love at some point to just come up to them and say, hey, Dad, it's just time.
Yes.
But that leads to the other problems with politicians. Ego. He can't let it go. He'll burn down the entire Democrat Party if he has to. He can't let it go. It's who he is. He fell into that trap that politicians always fall into. He forgot this was about service. And it became Joe the president.
Yep.
Not Joe the man. He can't quit. He's going to take his chances and their chances, and I'm happy to see it. I want them to lose. But he can't let it go. Have you noticed that?
Absolutely.
He's defined by it. Even if he goes down as a man who's seen for the rest of his life as senile and inappropriate for this office, he'll do it because his heart just can't let it go. That's not service. That's ego. He's worshiping self at that stage. And that's the problem with politicians. They'll do anything to hold on to an office. They'll lie, cheat, steal, betray the voter, anything to hold on to the office. And this guy, God bless his heart, will do anything to hold on to that office. Now, here's where it's perplexing, because Trump's going to beat him at this rate, and I hope he does. They know it. Carville's screaming bloody murder.
I saw that.
All the other operatives are screaming bloody murder. They know he's about to go down. He can't let it go. It's more about Joe than anything. That's the prototypical politician, and that's exactly why he doesn't need to be anywhere near the White House.
Chris, I agree with you 100%. Now, I'm still fearful that after the convention, they're going to figure out a way to get him out of there so they can appoint somebody younger and try to put that contrast up there.
I believe it when I see it, because that guy is going down.
Oh, yeah. But I agree with you. I think his ego is definitely the main reason why he's there. And I want to ask you a question, because we still have a couple of minutes here, Chris, and I think this is worth bringing up to you. Based on what we've seen from him, based on the condition we've seen, there's a debate coming up in just a couple of weeks. How do you think that's going to go?
I think they're going to have the finest doctors in the world inject him with everything they can find to inject him. Adrenaline, Kool-Aid.
Some focus medicine.
Anything they can find. Advil. He's going to take it all, right? What's the supplements now that you see in the stores? It costs like $100 for a bottle.
Yeah.
Whole bottle of that. Red Bull energy drinks, whatever
Adderall.
it takes. He may die in the process, but he's going to speak his mind. And all joking aside, I think he'll probably be okay because the moment is so incredibly huge that he can't get up there and be the Joe we've seen before.
Well, it's also a CNN debate, if I understand correctly. So I won't be shocked if his team doesn't know every question before it's asked, and they already have notes for him, so he can perform.
I tell you this: we ought to. The real TV that night is heartbeat monitors for all the operatives that helped him prep. Because every time that man's asking a question, his heart's they're going to run off, right? Every time he's asking a question, and that's got to be the most nerve-wracking hour of television in the
Yes.
history for the Democrats of television, because Trump is going to be pretty sharp. And something else Trump does pretty well is he's able to kind of control the situation through diversion and sometimes insults and sometimes name calling. I think that's going to throw Joe off balance.
Yeah.
I really do. His mental acumen isn't where it once was, and I think the old Joe Biden probably could have debated. Now, let's just be honest, though. Maybe this is okay. Remember, in presidential debates, expectations control everything. And right now, we have zero expectations of Joe Biden.
Yeah.
If he stands there without falling over the podium, could that be a win for him? That's the question. Because remember, perception controls the narrative post-debate. And if he does better than they thought he would, that's still a good movie. It's kind of like when you go to the theater and you're not thinking much about a show and it turns out okay, it beat expectations, and you say it's a good movie. Maybe that's what Joe's doing here. I don't know. But Trump is the one that will also have some pressure, because I think there's going to be an expectation for him to perform very well.
Yeah.
And so what we don't need is him having hiccups or slips, because that could control the narrative after.
Well, the media is already trying to say that he's the one losing his mental cognitives. They're trying to flip that script.
But remember, the debate itself, it will be watched because it's going to be entertaining. But most people don't watch debates if they're questioning who to vote for. Most of the folks that watch debates, people already have a side.
Yeah, they're already on team A or team B.
But here's what happens: the debate takes place in that hour or hour and a half. It's the narrative after that controls the uninformed.
Yeah.
Because the uninformed probably aren't paying attention either way. They're out there, they're trying to figure out when Taylor Swift's going to sing her next song, right? The narrative is going to help. So I'm sure Fox will spin it our way and they'll spin it their way. But I'm hoping Trump performs strongly and Biden performs the way we think he will.
Yeah.
But my goodness, they're gonna prop him full of everything they got.
Oh, yeah. They did it at the State of the Union. And
He looked okay that night, didn't he? Yeah.
Now, if you go back and study that speech, it's the same speech he's given the last 3 years before he gave this one, just put in different orders. But, yeah, he did all right that night, and maybe they're going to pull a trick like, you remember that movie years ago called Dave, where they had an actor replace the president? Maybe that's what they're going to do.
I've been hearing that conspiracy nonsense online for 4 or 5 years.
Oh, it's a joke.
I mean, I know it is. That's not a joke to some of these people out there. The internet has destroyed our minds.
It has.
It's destroyed our minds. And I keep seeing these conspiracies out there that this guy's passed away and that he's really an actor playing him.
Yeah, I'm not buying that. That was definitely a joke on my part.
There's going to be a moment in time where JFK Jr. comes back from the clouds. Have you seen this? Comes back from the clouds and he changes everything. None of this is going to happen. It's just that the lunacy of the internet has driven us all mad. And we're going to wrap up here, but just keep in mind, not everything you read on the internet is true. Not everything you hear is true. It's best to take everything with a grain of salt and find a few more sources outside of that little area you're researching, because conspiracies don't aid us very well.
No.
Don't aid us very well. Anyway, Jack, I appreciate you being here. That was a heck of a show in many ways. I think if we survive that,
I think people are going to enjoy it, and I think sometimes we do need to cover some other areas, and I think that this gave us an opportunity for you to profess your love for the Boston Celtics.
It's not difficult. The Red Sox and the Celtics.
Hey, I've got a Red Sox logo on today.
Not difficult. Bruins. You notice it's kind of a Boston-centric thing.
It is.
And then you've got the Cubs
and the Blackhawks.
And you got
You're getting shrugs by the owner, who's like some terrible team.
Cardinals. We'll see how that works out. Now, I will say this: to his credit, the St. Louis Cardinals are our National League Yankees.
Yeah,
they've won more championships than I care to count. Am I right?
You are correct.
Am I right?
Yes.
And they stole Lou Brock from us back in the day.
They did. That was a steal.
Haven't recovered from that. Pretty sure Stan Musial as well. Probably stole them all. Probably all Midwestern Chicagoans. Anyway, I appreciate it, Jay. It's a good show. This has been Chris McDaniel's America. We'll see you next time.
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back.
the My Pillow guy.
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, My Pillow 2.0.
Wow, it's so soft and smooth.
It's cool to the touch. How did you do that?
Well, we took My Pillow's patented fill and combined it with this new technology that we didn't have back then when I invented My Pillow to bring you the best pillow in history, My Pillow 2.0. Just like all of you, I never imagined that My Pillow could get any better. That's why I haven't changed it in nearly 20 years. Then I heard about a revolutionary new technology, and I knew I had to bring it to you all. My Pillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of My Pillow.
The My Pillow 2.0 is cooler and softer than the last My Pillow. It is so comfortable to sleep on at night. I look forward to going to bed, and I wake up well rested in the morning.
Sleep is all about temperature and height. My Pillow 2.0's patented adjustable fill is going to give you the exact individual support you need from your head to your bed. And now here's where it gets even better. We've all experienced those temperature-related sleep interruptions where you get too hot, you toss and turn, you flip your pillow over to the cool side. Well, all that's gone with my brand new My Pillow 2.0 cooling fabric that's made with temperature-regulating thread.
The best sleep just got even better. Whether you have a MyPillow or not, you need to get the brand new MyPillow 2.0. Call or go to MyPillow.com now. Use your promo code, and for a limited time when you buy one, you'll get a second one absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
Visit MyPillow.com.